The Chevrolet Blazer ZR2 is an incredibly underrated off-roader, right, Case?
Yeah, and that means it's also underpriced. And in this video, we're going to talk about why this Blazer ZR2 is a future classic.
Of course, the Chevrolet Blazer debuted back in the 1960s. This is not that iconic Blazer. This is the S10 Blazer, which was based, of course, on the S10 pickup truck. And technically, this is the second generation of S10 Blazer manufactured from 1995 through 2005. Now, the standard S10 Blazer was a pretty cool little runaround, fairly decent off-road as well, but the ZR2 package took it to another level.
Unlike some off-road packages today, this ZR2 was not just an appearance pack. It got you some serious hardware changes underneath. According to the internet, they even widened the frame, played around with the axles a little bit. This vehicle is about 4 inches wider than a standard Blazer. It also sits 3 inches taller. We've got 31 by 10.5 inch tires from the factory. These ones are KO2s, 15-inch wheels, so a lot of sidewall, a G80 rear locker, underbody protection, and Bilstein shocks.
Hello. One of the challenges with the ZR2 that certainly hurt its sales potential is that the ZR2 variant of the S10 was only available in the two-door configuration. Now, what this means is they have a really cool side view profile. So you got this kind of very retro C-pillar that juts back toward the front of the car and these funky shapes on the windows, which I think looks really cool. But it also means if you have a family or even a friend, it's not ideal. Now that ZR2 on the back is actually in reference to the RPO code, which is manufacturing code that designates what this vehicle is, and that all sounds very confusing, but I'll just show you. So here in the glove box, you've got your VIN and you've got all of the options that this ZR2 came with, and if you look closely, one of those options is ZR2, meaning that this is in fact an actual ZR2. So if you're ever wondering if you're buying the real deal, check the glove box. I want to talk about this for a sec too. Look how 90s fantastic that is. Look at this. For your cross-country adventure, you got sea, you got mountains, you got that. You get Moab, Utah, all on the owner's manual. This thing is like a rock. All right, Case, now for some fast roads in the ZR2 full throttle.
That's a very bold thing you're doing to this transmission, Tommy.
You say the 4L60 is not known for its longevity, my dude?
No, not according to me. I've never owned a 4L60, but
it's too good for you.
According to the internets, 4L60, maybe not the best transmission ever made. I think they're fixable, but from the factory, they had some issues.
Have you seen like someone do a rebuild on a 4L60 that knows what they're doing?
Yeah, it takes them 30 seconds because they've done it 100,000 times.
It takes them about 4.5 minutes from start to finish. These Blazers on the road are okay. Now they are a little wider, like you said, about 4 inches. Actually, it's a lot wider than a standard Blazer, so they feel more stable than the normal S10s. But like an old one like this, especially with miles, it's going to be a pretty soft driving experience.
Yeah, this one's a little rickety. There's 100% better Blazer ZR2s out there, probably even the majority, and that's saying something because most of these Blazers haven't really been protected and preserved and well looked after. They're not really museum pieces on average. They get used pretty hard because they are so inexpensive. But this was just a great era for a lot of four-wheel drive, relatively small SUVs, and this competed against some good ones. So much noise every time we drove over a bump.
Yeah, everything rattles and squeaks in this car. But like, look, I mean, the most iconic, this is a 2000 model year Blazer. The most iconic small SUV of this era, like the 90s and the early 2000s, for sure the Cherokee, right?
Yeah, the XJ, I think that's the definitive most iconic.
For sure, and the Jeep Cherokees now are getting, I mean, they hit like, for a while they are a good one, it's gonna run you $10,000 or $15,000. Now, from your kind of standpoint, Case, would you get a Cherokee or would you get a Blazer?
For the money, I would probably get a Blazer. I love the solid front axle on the XJ, and I love that 4-liter, but these are quite a bit less expensive than XJs in this day and age. It's maybe not quite as big of a parts catalog that you can modify these with compared to the XJ. There's every part imaginable for it.
Yeah.
So it depends on what direction you want to go, what kind of thing that you want to build. But if you want to do a budget build, I would go for this.
You can pick up a really good Blazer for like, I mean, the best in the world, like you talked about, is going to be around
$7,500 maybe.
A good one's going to
sure.
be like 6 to 7 though, for sure. And then a clapped one's going to be 2 or 3 like this one.
Yeah.
But, you know, even for $7,000, this is a lot of machine, right? You can have a lot of fun out on
Not
trails.
this one in particular,
No,
but
not a good one.
a good one, yeah.
Yeah, you can have a lot of fun out on trails with something like this, right?
Under the hood is the standard 4.3 liter V6 that we've come to know very well from many GM products, and here in the States, this was the motor you'd come to expect in any Blazer, the ZR2 included. It's not a massive powerhouse, 190 horsepower with 250 pound-feet of torque, so not bad for a small SUV like this one. And there were 2 transmission options. You could get a 5-speed manual, which is pretty cool, but this had what many of these Blazers had, the 4L60, 4-speed automatic, or as some people called them, the 4L Slippy.
I will say, not the strongest transmission, but 4.3 Vortec is pretty much indestructible, right? These engines will go till the end of time.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big displacement engine for a little SUV.
It's actually,
by
I mean,
today's standards.
this thing is roughly the size of like a compact car by modern standards, so 4.3, pretty good.
Whew,
Sounds like a car crash.
sounds like quality.
These interiors I don't think were super well bolted together.
To be fair, this is also not the best example of any Blazer ZR2 out there. We got this for less than $1,000.
$900.
There's a few things wrong with it. The park and brake light won't turn off. The service engine soon light is on. My seat is permanently reclined,
What?
which I don't mind.
This is gangster case.
It's a little creaky. There's a crack in the windshield. It's not the best fun, but we got it for cheap, and all we're trying to do is take it to Moab and do some fun trails.
And listen, for $900 that we paid for this, there is no better car in the world, right? It's got good four-wheel drive still. It's got a pretty strong sounding engine. It's got a good transmission. Like, these things, I like this saying and I've heard it before, these things will run longer worse than some cars will run at all. This era of GM, they'll just keep limping along into eternity.
Yeah, and if you do want to get yourself a decent one, you can find it for less than $10,000 all day long.
All right, we're climbing up lava lane here. Now this is a really steep hill and we're gonna stop right in the middle here and see if this four-wheel drive system can get us up. Oh, like it's nothing.
Yeah,
They're really good off-road. Now the secret to the capability on these, in my opinion, is kind of a lot of ground clearance. They actually have pretty good sized tires relative to the size of the little truck.
absolutely.
And they're also pretty lightweight, so they kind of just bound up anything to point them at.
And that's something that's almost completely missing in a lot of modern off-roaders, is one that's compact, a small footprint, so you have more options for what line you want to take on a trail. You're also not going to be rubbing tree branches the whole time. And like you said, lightweight, which is just less physics that you have to fight to get up and over an obstacle, and that's a great thing.
Now, going down the log course, pretty comfortable actually, because it does have a solid rear axle with leaf springs.
Yeah.
But the front end, fully independent. So it's got a pretty good off-road ride, all things considered, from the era at least.
And this entire suspension is well loved.
Well loved. Well lubricated from some oil leaks as well.
Oh yeah, still a little creaky.
So this Blazer has an interesting locking differential setup, right? Which you just saw there. You want to explain how it works?
This is the famous G80 rear locker. It's something that's been in so many GM products for such a long time, even to this day, and it works. The only bummer is that sometimes when it engages, well, every time when it engages pretty hard, so you don't have this high degree of control over when you're going to climb up an obstacle. When the G80 kicks in, it kicks in hard, sends you up, it gets you through it, but with a little bit of drama.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an elegant solution, but it'll always get you there, which I think is kind of cool about G80s. And it's an actual locker, it's not a limited slip. Like once it engages, those rear wheels are locked together until you let off, and then it's got to reassess that kind of centrifugal slip, and then it re-engages again. Now, as we start moving on to the interior of the Blazer, a lot of this is very nostalgic for me, because as a kid of the 90s, a lot of friends growing up had GMT 400s, or this is a GMT 330, and this particularly is one of my favorite parts of the interior. Now, this door panel is the ultimate in plastic fantastic, and I've interacted with several of these throughout the years, and they all seem to have about the same amount of movement within the door panels, but these buttons are iconic. So you got your lock, your unlock, your power windows, your power mirrors, and these buttons look like they came straight out of a McDonald's Happy Meal toy, like something you'd expect on a PS1. They are incredibly chonky and they're very satisfying to push, but they also last forever. And the theme of this car is nothing is really that attached to anything else, but it doesn't seem to matter because this era of GM will just last forever and everything will break once or twice, but it'll always get you home. And I think that's what's really cool about these.
This Chevy Blazer has a surprisingly cool overhead console. You've got temperature and your compass that you can switch between these unknown units and the real units that we use here in the States. Very nice. You've also got map lights that can be pointed any which way, just like on an airplane, in case you want the comforts of flying in your own vehicle. Got a few different cubbies that you can use to store various items, including your CDs and your sunglasses, and even more map lights all the way at the back of the console.
Now, when you look at the dashboard design of this Blazer, the first thing you're greeted with is this large and in-charge steering wheel, and it's actually leather wrapped and feels really good even at 192,000 hard miles. But really large steering wheel, pretty smooth steering left and right, and I really like this era of gauges from General Motors because they're so bold and easy to read. So of course on the left there, you've got your tachometer, you've got the big speedometer, but you also have your temperature, your water temperature there, large and in charge, your oil pressure, and then of course fuel, and even a volt gauge, which by 2025 standards is very, very good.
This Blazer comes from the era of some of the best cloth seats in any vehicle, which also means some of the best seats in any vehicle, because these are absolute lazy boy loungers, right, Tommy?
Oh, they're so good. And actually, the back seat, once you're back here, is incredibly comfortable. You kind of just spread out and enjoy life. Now, Case, the front of this car is actually pretty standard in how it works, but the back of the car is some cool stuff. Like, look at this. Armrests that are fully cushioned.
Wow.
Check that out. You got
luxury.
Ashtrays in the back, so
your kids can smoke.
Your kids can smoke, and you got tons and tons and tons of cubbies. Like, for example, these little cubbies here by the wheel wells are enormous, and I don't know what you'd put in there, but you got a couple stray water bottles, keep them locked away, but a really good rear seat once you're back here.
You can also pop your windows out, which is kind of good. It gives you a little bit of fresh air. Not too much, though. You'd hate to have too much.
Heck yeah, dude. Check that out. Pop that back. Now, one thing that's a little interesting, too, are these headrests, which actually fold away when not in use, and they fold up to keep you safe. Although not that safe, because these Blazers were they were pretty notorious for being very unsafe. I think NHTSA rated this thing a poor in frontal crash test, right?
It sure did, so not the best there.
Yeah, keep them shiny side up for sure. So to get into the trunk of the Blazer, first you gotta move the spare tire. And that's a little bit unfortunate in this one. Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, it's mint. Funny thing is that these swing outs rusted on almost every one of these ZR2 Blazers that I've seen.
Yep, that's right. And you can actually see, this is my funniest favorite part about this car. You can see the lash there, right? And then you have these little nubby things, these little rubber grommets, to stop the whole thing from rattling.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny. So the cool thing about this trunk, there's a couple of ways to get things in and out, right, Case?
It's true. You could just pop open the top glass and reach in, or you can open it all the way, like a Range Rover, some Land Cruisers. You got a little tailgate.
This is actually really cool. And then you got this little place here to tailgate off of if you're at like a football game or something. And then you can see our trunk is absolutely horribly disgusting because this little Blazer just competed in an off-road challenge over at TFL Off-Road called No Pain, No Gain, where it absolutely dominated out in Moab. Yeah. So we got that series coming soon, but as a result, it's pretty gross.
I think it was gross before that.
I think it was gross when we started, yeah. I'm really into these things, and I really like the size of them, and I also think the design is aging pretty well. I think that we're starting to see some more interest in the kind of 90s bubble look, and this really has that 90s bubble look.
It's great looking design, especially with the fender flares with 31s, which, again, for a vehicle this size is quite a bit of tire.
Yeah.
And I saw one going down the road the other day that was bright yellow, arguably the hero color, wouldn't you say? And looked to be in pretty decent shape, and it caught my eye.
Yeah.
That was a cool thing to see running down the road.
And the thing is, like, you could spend less, and you could even get like a base Blazer with a 4-cylinder, but these cars across the lineup are so cheap that I would wait out for a ZR2 And then if you really do watch this video and think, I need one of those, you might have to travel a little bit, because I think a lot of these ended up in the Midwest and then ended up just totally rotted out.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of rust on these. This in particular, for all of the things that it does need and has wrong with it, rust is not really one of its big issues.
No, it's got a good body, and that's like the benefit of coming out west. So if you're like out east or in the Midwest and you're looking at one of these, go to Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, to some extent, Nevada, California, right? There's still a dime a dozen out here, and they're not going to be rusty because everything on this car is going to be cheap to fix.
Yeah.
It's all just S10 parts, and they sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of S10s and Blazers. But what is going to be expensive to fix are quarter panels and frames and floors, and that's stuff that really rots out.
Yeah, bodywork's never cheap.
Well, look, I think as a whole, the ZR2 is awesome if you don't have a family, because the lack of rear doors is definitely a practicality problem. But if you just want a cool little 4x4 to go explore the mountains, and one that I don't think you're ever going to lose money on because they're not going to get it cheaper than they are now, this is a really cool option.
Absolutely, a good buy and vehicle that we really enjoy.
The Chevy S10 Blazer, I think, and I hope we've proved to you, is a really affordable way to go hit some cool trails.
Absolutely, and this one is actually one of the more affordable. We bought it for less than $1,000, used it in a video series, and it's going up for sale again very soon. So anybody out there has the opportunity to buy this exact one.
So be sure to stay tuned to Peak Auto Auctions for your chance to buy this very Blazer, which I think is a pretty cool little rig for, you know, for a small amount of money. I think that there's no way you're going to lose money on these, right? They got a really bulletproof engine. The transmissions are okay, but they're incredible off-road, and they're just really unique. You don't see a lot of them anymore. You kind of see a lot of the Cherokee stuff, right, and some of the Ford products, but the little Chevys, very underrated.
And capable enough for us to have some fun in Moab, which is saying a lot.
Guys, let us know what you think in the comment section below. This has been Tommy.
In case.
We'll see you next time.